Hey folks, it's DC here from DC's Gadgets. Today is September the 20th of 2020, and today's talk is not about bees, it is actually about politics. And so if you don't want to hear about politics, or if you're a socialist liberal, you're probably not going to like this video. I'm going to do it anyway because something has happened which is extremely important, and people need to know what's going on, and they need to make some educated decisions, and you need to go vote. So, unless you live under a rock, by now you should know that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died. And I don't want to sound crass or unremorseful. I don't want to feel like I'm happy because somebody died. I'm not happy somebody died. I am very happy that Ginsburg is no longer a court justice, because she's never been a real advocate for the Constitution as it's written. She's been extremely liberal. Some of her decisions I actually agreed with, but 90% of them I did not. And she's never been a fan of the Second Amendment. So her passing has opened up a huge can of worms in the political scene. The socialists want our current president to wait until after the election to nominate someone, with the hopes that Kamala Harris will become president and appoint somebody. And they also hope to take over the Senate. Slim chance of both, but there is a chance. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. The other thing that happened is, up until last Wednesday, I would say, or up until the event of Ginsburg's dying, I would say that probably 30% of the electorate or more hadn't considered the impact of this presidential election. The fact is that very little has changed. It's just moved the timeline a little bit. Anyone who's really paying attention to reality would have realized that the next sitting president will appoint at least 2, possibly 3 Supreme Court justices. With Ginsburg dying, that has now brought the attention to the forefront. And so people that hadn't thought about this before, that were kind of brain dead last week about what this election really means, all of a sudden they woke up. And so that if President Trump delays appointing someone, it sends ripples across political waves. It is a lot of things. It will ignite the voters on both sides of this issue. It'll ignite the conservatives and it'll ignite the socialists. You'll get more people to vote. When the election is just about Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, and let's be realistic, folks, Joe Biden is not the presidential candidate. The man, I don't know if he can tie his shoes. He's losing his mind. And I think the Socialist Party in the country is trying to put a woman in the White House by a back door, by putting Biden in and then declaring him unfit and putting Harris in. But like I said, I'll talk about that in a little bit. If the contest is between Donald Trump and the socialist nominee, Trump wins. 85 or 88% probability that Trump wins. And the reason, and of course the polling data says different. The polling data with Hillary running said different too. We saw that then. The reason why the polling data is off is because your polls are controlled by a bunch of intellectuals, which are typically a bunch of liberals, and they're asking the wrong people the wrong questions. The reason Donald Trump wins is because states like Pennsylvania and Ohio, where the last president told them the really good jobs are gone, people there are now working because they're mining coal and they're making steel, where they were not mining coal and making steel 4 years ago. So even with COVID, even with the government shutdown, even with the socialists trying to keep things shut down and destroy our economy, the economy is actually rebounding quite nicely. And people remember what it was like under the last president, and the fact that they were not working, and the fact that they were working under the current president. So yeah, Trump wins by a huge margin. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see it closer than ever before in some of your predominantly blue states. I mean, California and New York, they're going to go liberal. They're going to go socialist. Right? There's no doubt about it. But I wouldn't be surprised to see 35 to 40% of those states voting red, which would be pretty awesome. So you may not get the popular vote this time like you had last time. Anyway, let's go back to topic. With Ginsburg's death, it opens up a can of worms. Trump needs to appoint somebody right now. I mean, it's actually his job. If you read the Constitution and what it says the president is supposed to do, it says specifically when there is a vacancy on the court, the president is supposed to fill it. Nominate somebody, let the Senate approve that person, fill it. It doesn't say to wait, it just says to do it. It says his job to do it. But there's also the opportunity. The old adage of a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. There's a bird in the hand right here. President Trump can nominate somebody who is a constitutional judge. Not a far right-winger, not a far left-winger. Somebody who reads the Constitution, understands the Constitution, and follows the Constitution. Kavanaugh is proving himself to be just that. And the advantage we have right now with Trump in the White House versus a typical politician is Donald Trump is not a politician. He's a businessman. And I think one of the biggest lessons that we should learn as a nation is we should never put a politician back in the White House again. Put a businessman there. Put somebody who's been a CEO of some huge company, who understands how to deal with government bureaucracy, who understands how to form trade deals, who understands what it is to actually build a company and work in the private sector. The majority of politicians in Washington have never held a real job in their life, and they have no idea what it's like to work. So yeah, I think that one of the best lessons in the last 4 years is we should not have a politician in the White House. We should have a business executive in the White House making decisions. So Trump not being a politician, he can see past 4 years. Politicians, they see 4 years. Everything, they don't care about anything past that. It's just 4 years. So his concern is, what's he going to do? What he does today, what impact will it have 30 years from now? Which most people don't do that. Most people can't think about what happens next week. And he's thinking about that. If he puts the right justice on the court, a nice young justice, there's a girl named Amy, is currently the heir apparent to be nominated. I believe she's 48 years old. If he could put Amy on the court, and she is a good constitutional judge, that can have an impact on policies in the United States, not just for 30 years, but for 60 or 70 years. And the biggest issue is the Second Amendment. The Constitution clearly indicates that every single gun control law that has been put on the books in the last 40 years is unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court has never addressed the issue, partly because the folks that would bring it to the Supreme Court don't want to, because the Supreme Court has been stacked against the Constitution. Should President Trump put a good constitutional attorney on the bench, it would be stacked in favor of the Constitution. And every gun control law that's been enacted since 1969 would be erased, and our freedoms would be restored. So for that reason, I mean, that should be enough. There's other reasons too, but for that reason, there should be plenty of reason to go out and vote. But encourage your senators, encourage the president to, yes, go and nominate somebody immediately. Go and nominate a good constitutional judge to sit on the bench, to make constitutional decisions, to fix a lot of the crap that's been busted. Because the idea in the past has been, if we can't do it by legislation, then we'll do it by manipulating the laws. That's been a tactic from socialists for a long time. They get a judge to sit there who makes up laws and doesn't interpret them. So yes, call your senators. If President Trump makes a nomination, call your senators, encourage them. Yes, you need to vote. You need to pass this nomination as quickly as possible. Because here's the alternative. If President Trump does not make a nomination, or if our current Senate does not ratify somebody before the election, your voter bases are going to be discouraged on one side, and they're going to be totally stimulated on the other side. And while it's a slim chance again of Kamala Harris becoming president, that chance gets greater when people realize that this is not an election between Trump and Harris, but this is an election to affect the next 30 to 60 years of the Supreme Court. When people realize that, it's going to stimulate the voter blocks. Imagine, if you will, the worst case scenario happens and Harris becomes president, and by some fluke they get a simple majority in the Senate. Could you imagine what the country would be like with Barack Obama or Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton sitting in Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat on the Supreme Court? That would screw the country for the next 10 generations. You cannot allow that to happen. Call your congressman, call your senators, send an email to the president, encourage him to nominate somebody as soon as possible, encourage your senators to push the vote through, to ratify this, and have the new justice sitting on the bench before the November election. That's the best thing we can do.